My dad cut me out of the will for not taking care of my disabled sister. Even I sacrificed my childhood for her. I hired a lawyer to end their control. I'm 28 and have been living on my own for 3 years in this ground floor flat that I worked hard to obtain. Sarah, my elder sister, is 35 years old and suffers from cerebral palsy and learning difficulties requiring 24/7 care. My parents have always been her caregivers, and my entire upbringing concentrated on Sarah's needs. I never had birthday parties because Sarah couldn't stand the noise. My parents couldn't drive me to practice while still minding Sarah, so I never participated in sports. Sarah never had friends around because she needed peace and quiet. The family went to the same handicap-accessible cabin 3 hours away every Christmas because Sarah couldn't tolerate change. I moved out at the age of 21 as soon as I could and started working at a call center while attending night school. I worked 50-hour weeks to earn my degree in graphic design and ultimately got a remote job that paid well. I located an apartment that is wonderful for me. It's close to shopping and includes a tiny garden, which was something I never had growing up. My family have only paid me a visit twice throughout my time here. They only phoned when they needed me to watch Sarah when they went to the doctor or the grocery store. I always said yes, even when Sarah yelled and flung things at me because she didn't like change. My father began hinting that my flat would be excellent for Sarah roughly 8 months ago. It's on one level, with broad doors and an accessible bathroom. He continuously points out improvements I could do to better accommodate her wheelchair. I shrugged it off, figuring he was simply making conversation. Then my mother inquired about my working schedule, how flexible it was, and whether I could work while caring for someone. I assured her I was content with my present circumstances and switched the subject. They asked me to supper 4 months ago and then ambushed me. They had already spoken with Sarah's social worker about moving her care to me. They had researched into the government aid I may receive as her caretaker. They had even figured out how to use grant money to fix up my apartment. They presented a thorough plan for how I would take Sarah throughout the week and they would manage weekends. I said absolutely not. My mom started crying about how tired they were, how they had given up everything for Sarah, and how I had to help now. My father accused me of being selfish by living alone in an apartment that could accommodate Sarah when they were suffering. I informed them that I had already sacrificed my entire youth for Sarah. There were no dance lessons, sleepovers, or college trips since everything focused around Sarah. They stated it was not the same. I was a child at the time and didn't grasp the notion of sacrifice. Now that I was an adult, I needed to take responsibilities. I departed and did not communicate with them for 4 weeks. Then they launched their campaign. They alerted all relatives that I was abandoning my disabled sister. My aunt phoned and wept about how I could let Sarah suffer. My grandmother said she was disappointed in me. My relatives posted Facebook postings about family responsibility and ableism that were clearly aimed at me. My parents started bringing Sarah to my apartment without telling me, leaving her at my door and saying they had an emergency. The first time, I invited them in and observed her for 8 hours before they vanished. The second time, I phoned Adult Protective Services to report abandonment. My parents had to rush back and consult with a social worker. They were upset, but couldn't say anything with the social worker nearby. Then they attempted guilt. They had Sarah call me sobbing, stating she missed me and wanted to live with me. Sarah never stated such nuanced beliefs, so I knew she was tutored. They gave me photographs of Sarah looking miserable with words about how much she wanted her sibling. They also made a scrapbook of us as kids to establish our connection, despite the fact that in every image, I looked sad while Sarah received all of the attention. The final straw came when they contacted my employer and informed him that I was necessary for a family medical emergency and possibly need to take long absence to care for my disabled sister. My boss understood, but he was concerned about my abilities to keep up with my workload. I had to explain everything and guarantee that it would not ruin my job. That's when I made the choice to end this for good. I spent the whole weekend sitting at my kitchen table with my laptop, visiting lawyer websites and reading reviews until my eyes hurt. I looked for topics like family harassment lawyer and forced caregiving legal aid and read through dozens of results. Most lawyers had sophisticated websites with stock photos of people shaking hands, but I needed someone who knew what my parents were doing. Around the evening, I discovered Sophia Taylor's website. Her description indicated that she specialized in boundary breaches and family coercion, which sounded just perfect. She was worried about adult children being dragged into care tasks they had not committed to. I thought she was talking about my same situation. I filled out her contact form right there, writing in the details about my parents arriving suddenly and ringing my employer. She had an opening on Monday morning at 10 o'clock, so I arranged it and spent the rest of the weekend trying not to think about how much this would cost. Monday morning I got to the video conference 6 minutes early, sitting in my home office with a notebook full of dates and details I had scribbled down. Sophia came on television at 10 o'clock. She seemed approximately 40, with short black hair and keen eyes that made me assume she was already examining everything. I began discussing the situation, hoping to maintain a steady voice, but she interrupted me within the first 4 minutes. She noted that what my parents were doing was not only bothersome or pushy, there was misuse of money and feelings. The term abuse struck me hard since I had disregarded it as mere family drama, but she highlighted that their attempt to push me into care had legal repercussions. She inquired about the call to my work, so I showed her the email my manager sent after my parents phoned him. Amelia leaned forward and stated it was workplace interference, which we could use. We went over everything in a methodical way over the next hour. She requested me to show her the guilt trip texts, photographs of Sarah they'd sent, and Facebook posts from family. She made notes on the 4 times they showed up at my residence, notably the second time I contacted Adult Protective Services. She wondered whether I had the police report for that incident, and I answered her that the officer had given me a case number. She instructed me to obtain a copy of the report straight soon as documentation was vital. By the conclusion of the call, I had developed a list of objects to obtain, including a timeline of every incident from the dinner ambush 4 months previous, and I felt as if someone had finally acknowledged this wasn't just me being dramatic. On Tuesday evening, I was working on a design project when my doorbell rang. I checked my phone and found that it was almost 8 o'clock. The doorbell rang again. Then someone hammered hard. I got up and looked through the peephole. My father's automobile was parked immediately outside my building, with Sarah visible in the passenger seat. My mom was at the door, hammering harder now. As I moved back from the door, my heart began to rush. They had done it before, but I wasn't going to let them this time. My mom started yelling through the door that I needed to help them because they were in trouble and wanted me to watch Sarah for a few hours. My father joined her, his voice louder, alleging I was selfish and ignorant. I grabbed my phone and phoned the non-emergency police number. The dispatcher asked what was going on, and I replied that my parents were at my door, refusing to leave despite my plea that they not come here. She said that a police officer will come by. For another 8 minutes, my parents kept yelling and screaming. My father informed me I was living in a flat that could accommodate Sarah while they battled. My mother stated I'd understand once I was older and had my own family commitments. They must have heard the sirens because it suddenly turned quiet and I heard their car doors slam. My family had already driven away when the policeman knocked on my door. The officer seemed to be a young man, maybe 28 years old. He took down my details and questioned about what had occurred. I told him about the continual harassment and showed him the SMS and emails. He typed everything down and issued me a report number. He added if they came back, I should call straight away. I texted Sophia the report number after he left and she replied within minutes, saying that this was exactly the paperwork we needed. On Wednesday afternoon, I was in the middle of a client conversation when my phone buzzed with a voicemail message from an unexpected number. I ended the call and listened to the message. It was my dad's voice, but it came from a different phone. He said they tried to be fair but I didn't give them a choice. He threatened to cut me out of their will unless I stood up for my family, as I should have done years ago. He went on about how disappointed they were and how I'd regret it when they departed and I had nothing. There was something cold about his speech that I hadn't heard before. I saved the voicemail and sent it to Sophia in an email with a note asking whether it was essential. She phoned back within an hour. She claimed this was financial manipulation, which supported my case immensely because it revealed a history of using money and guilt to influence me. She wondered whether I planned to inherit anything substantial, and I said probably not much, perhaps $25,000, if that. She said it didn't matter how much it was. What mattered was that they utilized it as a weapon. She encouraged me to keep all voicemails like this and not react to any tries to reach me. Hanging up the phone, I felt an odd mix of joy that the message had benefited my case and grief that my father had actually stated such things aloud. I awakened Thursday morning to an email from Ethan, my employer at the design firm. The subject line said, "Private conversation needed," and my stomach plummeted. He asked if I could have a video conference at 10 o'clock, so I spent the next hour getting ready and trying not to stress. When I signed in at 10 o'clock, Ethan was there looking apprehensive. He stated my parents had contacted again yesterday to check about my job schedule and whether the firm granted family leave. He claimed he warned them he couldn't discuss staff matters with family members, but he needed to know what was going on as it was affecting his professional reputation. My eyes began to sting, and I had to take a breath before speaking. I told him about how my parents tried to get me to take care of Sarah, how they harassed me, and the lawyer I had hired. I accessed the police report on my computer and gave him Sophia's contact information to show that I was doing this right. Ethan listened, and his expression softened. He mentioned that he believed and supported me, but he was concerned about how this may influence my ability to focus on my job. I told him that wouldn't happen, and that I was pursuing legal action to permanently cease the harassment. He agreed and requested me to keep him updated if my parents contacted the business again. After the talk, I sat there feeling unsteady since I had almost wept in front of my supervisor and my parents were now actively attempting to interfere with my employment. Friday night at 9 p.m., my phone phoned with an unexpected number. I nearly didn't react, but something made me pick up. It was Rachel, my mother's sister. She began by recounting how she had attended a family gathering and learnt about what was going on. She stated she couldn't believe I was abandoning Sarah after my parents had given everything for her. She mentioned the family was debating how selfish I was, and she wanted to hear my side of the story, but she couldn't see how I could explain it. I felt the normal remorse creep up, but then I recalled Sophia's comment about not participating. I took a big breath and mentioned the exact timing. I told her about my adolescence without birthday parties or friends, how my parents shocked me with their care plan, and how they arrived up suddenly and left Sarah at my door. I referenced to the Adult Protective Services calls and the police report from Tuesday. Rachel went silent for a long time. Then she remarked that she needed to think about various things. She added that she remembers some things from my youth that she hadn't paid much mind to at the time. She asked if she could call me back in a few days, and I said yes. After we hung up, I felt a flicker of confidence that at least one family member would comprehend my point of view. The next Monday, I went Sophia at her office to file the cease and desist letter. Her office was in an older downtown building with wood paneling and bookcases loaded with legal texts. We sat at her conference table, and she showed me the letter she had written. It was 2 pages long and covered every incidence of harassment, such as uninvited visits, the letter workplace contact, a social media campaign, and financial threats. Commanded that my parents stop contacting me, my employment, and showing up at my house. It outlined possible legal action including restraining orders, if the harassment persisted. Reading that made things feel more sincere and serious. Sophia asked if I wanted to make any alterations and I declined. It covered everything. She promised she'd send it certified mail so we could have proof they got it. I signed the authorization form and wrote a check to reimburse her retainer. Watching my savings account take a blow was unpleasant, but it felt vital. Walking out of her office, I felt strong and terrified at the same time as I was now taking things to the legal level, and there was no coming back. I didn't expect my parents to answer so quickly. Wednesday afternoon, my cousin Olivia emailed me a screenshot of a Facebook post my mother had written. The newspaper said that their ungrateful daughter had hired a lawyer to discard her injured sister. It said that they had given up everything to care for Sarah, and now their second daughter was tossing them away. It added that they were upset and couldn't grasp how they had raised someone so selfish. The post already had dozens of comments. Relatives and family friends accused me of being cruel and that I should be humiliated. My granny indicated that she was praying for my soul. People who scarcely knew me reposted the post and added their own remarks about how horrible I was. I wanted to tell everyone the truth, but Sophia suggested that engaging would only make things worse. I called instead and read her the post. She suggested capturing screenshots and preserving them because this was defamation and harassment. She stated my parents were attempting to pressure me to react publicly, but I needed to keep silent. She claimed we'd use all of this when we applied for the restraining order. I spent the majority of the day avoiding family members on social media and tried to concentrate on work while my phone was continuously vibrating with alerts. Wednesday morning, I received a call from a number with a government area code. It was David Roberts, a social worker from Adult Protective Services. He said he was looking into both of the complaints I had made about my parents leaving Sarah at my door. He asked if I had time to answer some long questions, and I agreed. He started asking me about my upbringing, how much time I had spent taking care of Sarah, and whether I had had normal childhood experiences. I explained to him that there would be no birthday parties, sports, or friends over as everything hinged on Sarah's needs. I informed him that I never went on college visits since my parents couldn't leave Sarah. He inquired about my parents' present conduct, and I detailed everything, including the dinner ambush, the social media campaign, and workplace intervention. He was quiet for a second after I was done. He then explained that what I had experienced was known as parentification. I had never heard the word before. He claimed that my parents had pushed me to take on adult caregiving tasks as a kid when I should have been able to be a child. He described it as a type of abuse, which explains why I was so averse to their present demands. I sat there with my phone, feeling like someone had finally put a name to something I had always felt but never understood. David explained that he was going to plan a house visit with my parents to investigate Sarah's existing care situation. He promised to contact me after the appointment to offer an update. After we hung up, I Googled parentification and spent an hour reading stories about my childhood. David phoned me again Friday afternoon, following his meeting with my parents. He suggested Sarah's physical care was fine, and my parents had the money and support networks to maintain caring for her. But then he said something that enraged me. He revealed that during the visit, my parents had told Sarah that I no longer loved her. They had reportedly been stating that I had moved away and forgotten about her, and that I no longer wanted to be her sister. David reported that when he inquired about me, Sarah seemed bewildered and sorrowful. He added that my parents were influencing me with Sarah's emotions, which was both cruel and inappropriate. He indicated that he was writing this in his report and advised that my parents seek treatment about reasonable limits. I hung up after thanking him for telling me. Then I sat there, shaking with anger since my parents weren't just bothering me anymore. They were messing with Sarah's head to get back at me. Sarah didn't know what was going on, and they made her think I had left her. I texted Sophia about what David had stated, and she responded that it was additional proof of my parents' manipulative actions. She claimed we had a good case now and asked whether I was prepared to seek for a restraining order. I began photographing everything that weekend. I wrote yes without hesitation. Every Facebook post my parents made included a screenshot with the timestamp visible. Every comment from a family informing me I was unkind was kept. Every furious message from strangers who somehow discovered my personal accounts ended up in a folder on my laptop. I developed a timeline beginning with that meal 4 months ago. When they stunned me, I noted down dates and times for every unexpected visit, with their whole strategy. Every phone call from family members pressing me, and every instance in which they sought to pressure me into embracing Sarah. The police record from when they abandoned her at my door was attached to the files. The voicemail discussing removing me out of their will was kept in 3 locations. By Sunday night, I produced an 18-page report that outlined how my parents had tormented me since I rebuffed their demands. Sophia contacted Monday morning to check in, and I assured her that I had completed the forms. She urged me to give everything to her so she could study it before we filed for a restraining order. I spent an hour preparing all the files before sending them through. 4 hours later, she called back and said that the proof was strong. She said that the remarks on social media alone showed a pattern of harassment and defamation, and that adding the job interference and physical intrusions into my home made her case stronger. We set up an appointment on Thursday to file the paperwork. As I was working on a logo design for a customer on Friday afternoon, my phone rang. It was Rachel. I almost didn't answer because I thought she was calling to yell at me again for leaving Sarah, but something made me pick up. She started speaking before I could say anything. She added that she had been thinking about our earlier chat all week. She says she contacted David to ask him about his appraisal and what he noticed during his house visit. He briefed her about the parentification issue and how my parents had convinced Sarah that I no longer loved her. Rachel didn't say anything for a second. Then she said she was sorry. She said she had been to my house many times as a youngster and remembered how I never got to do anything regular. How every family gathering centered on Sarah's needs, but no one ever asked what I needed. She claimed that the entire family had accepted my parents' idea that I would devote my life for Sarah, just as they did. And she had no idea how inaccurate that was until David revealed it to her. Then she said something that caused me to cry. She suggested if I needed a character witness for any legal concerns, she'd do it. She vowed to share the truth about what my childhood was like. I thanked her 5 times before hanging up, feeling as if I wasn't totally alone in this. My doorbell rang on Tuesday night of the next week. I peeked through the peephole and saw my father standing by himself. He looked dreadful. His clothes were disheveled and black bags under his eyes showed that he hadn't slept in days. I unlocked the door but left the chain lock on. He asked if he can come inside and speak. I declined, but I'd listened from where I was. He indicated that taking care of Sarah was making my mom's health worse. He stated they didn't need me to take over totally. They just required little support. He looked miserable standing there, and I almost felt sorry for him. I told him that there were professional care and respite programs that could provide them breaks without putting all of their obligations on me. His whole face changed. He grew upset and claimed I was attempting to cast Sarah away like rubbish. He said they'd taught me better than to desert family when things went rough. Previously given up my entire youth and would not do it again. I closed the door while he was still chatting. I met with Lily Benson for the first time on Thursday morning. Her workplace was in an antique house that had been transformed into a therapy clinic. She asked me to fill out some paperwork outlining what brought me here, and then we spoke for almost an hour. I told her about Sarah and my parents, the relentless pressure and how I couldn't sleep any longer. How I kept checking my phone for another terrible message or a relative ringing to guilt trip me. She inquired about my background and I told her the same things I had told David. Sarah doesn't have any friends, sports or birthday celebrations. Lily said something that resonated with me. She went on. My guilt about Sarah wasn't rational because I was a child who had no choice in any of it. She said, my parents were doing the same thing again, trying to hurt one daughter for the sake of the other. She also said, The fact that I felt guilty about protecting myself showed how deeply they'd conditioned me to put Sarah first no matter what. We made weekly appointments, and I left feeling like therapy might actually help. David contacted the following Monday with news that absolutely stunned me. He claimed that throughout his assessment, he asked Sarah clearly what she wanted. Not what my parents wanted for her, but what Sarah herself sought. Sarah had told him that she wanted to live in a group home with other kids her age. She had apparently been watching television programs of folks with disabilities living freely and wanted to give it a try. David claimed that my parents had never asked Sarah what she wanted. They thought she was terrified of change and would have to stay with them forever. But Sarah had informed him that she was weary of sitting at home all the time and wanted to meet new people. I sat there clutching my phone, feeling an odd combination of relief and wrath. Sarah's yearning for something different made me relieved. Anger because my parents never asked her and simply thought I'd take up their viewpoint without investigation. My parents knew about Sarah's discussion with David by Wednesday. I knew because they went completely nuts on social media. My mother published a lengthy article about how I poisoned their daughter against them, how I hired a social worker to abduct Sarah and destroy their family. The post showed both my whole name and the name of my graphic design business. By Wednesday afternoon I had gotten messages from people I didn't know. People I had never met told me I should be ashamed of myself, that I was a horrible person for leaving my disabled sister, and that I deserved whatever horrific things came to me. I told him I had. My anxiety increased. I couldn't focus on work. I would check my phone every 5 minutes to see if there were any new messages or comments. I called Sophia in a panic, and she told me to capture screenshots and send them to the documentation. She claimed the social media campaign constituted harassment and defamation, which bolstered our case for a restraining order. My phone rang on Tuesday morning with a number I didn't know. It was the security man from the building that contains my company's main office. He said that 2 people were in the foyer and wanted to talk to me. They said they were my parents. He stated they had identified the company site online and driven over, despite the fact that I worked remotely from home. He inquired whether I wanted him to let them go. I said no, and asked him to tell them to go. He stated they were rejecting and became loud with him. I had to call the building administration and explain that my parents were harassing me and that I was going to pursue a restraining order. The manager handled it properly, but I felt guilty, as if I was carrying all of this familial issue into business settings and making it everyone else's concern. The security guard called back 30 minutes later, stating my parents had eventually fled after the management threatened to call the authorities. I met Sophia in the courts on Thursday afternoon to file a restraining order. I brought a folder that was over 4 inches thick. Screenshots of all social media postings and communications. The police report from the moment they abandoned Sarah at my door. Documentation of their call to my employer. Rachel supplied a written statement explaining my childhood. A letter from David describing his studies on parentification and Sarah's indicated intentions. The court clerk handled all of Sophia's paperwork and then forwarded it to the judge. We waited for 4 hours before being invited into a small office. The judge studied the documents and asked me a few questions about the harassment. Then she gave him a temporary restraining order and set a full hearing for 3 weeks later. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt an unusual combination of sorrow and relief. I was officially breaking up with my folks. Part of me felt terrible about it, but primarily I was pleased that the harassment might finally be finished. The hearing for the restraining order happened on a very cold morning in early December. I came with Sophia and all of our evidence collected in binders. My parents and their lawyer had already gotten there. Some guy in a nice suit continued staring at me as if I were the worst person in the world. Their lawyer sought to depict me as spiteful. I told them I was trying to get back at my parents for asking for help with my sister who is disabled. That I was manipulating the justice system to dodge family duties. But then the judge began studying the evidence. She read David's testimony on parentification and how I felt motivated to be a caretaker as a child. She witnessed images of my parents exposing my personal information online and instigating people to harass me. She examined the record of them coming at my employment and calling my employer. She then inquired about Sarah's indicated objectives and David's proposal for group home placement. When she was done reviewing everything, she glanced at my parents and suggested their conduct had been wrong and dominating. She argued they had no right to force their daughter to take care of them or to bother her for establishing limits. She gave him a permanent restraining order right there. My parents weren't allowed to call me, visit my house or come to my office. They required to remain at least 300 feet away from me at all times. Sitting in the courtroom and hearing the judge accept what I'd been feeling my whole life made me want to cry with relief. David contacted me the next week with updates on Sarah's transition. He indicated that he was working with my parents and a group home placement expert to select the suitable institution. Sarah had visited 3 different areas and especially loved one with younger occupants and a range of activities. She was afraid and enthusiastic about the transition. David added that she had been taking orientation classes and spoke about having a roommate for the first time in her life. He mentioned Sarah asked about me during one session and he told her that I cared for her but needed some space from our parents right now. Hearing Sarah was sincerely thrilled about her transfer made me feel both joyful and sad. Good, since she was now able to be independent and make friends. Sad because she should have had these chances years ago instead of being kept at home because my parents thought she couldn't handle change. Sarah moved into the group home 2 days after Christmas, and I visited Lily every week until January because the whole arrangement made me feel uncomfortable and confused. Some days, I felt relieved that the harassment had ceased and that I could continue my ordinary life without having to check my phone every 5 minutes for furious texts. Other days, I felt awful, as if I should have done more to help my parents or found a middle ground that didn't result in a restraining order. Lily repeatedly reminded me that my remorse was unwarranted. She added that my parents had taught me from an early age to feel responsible for Sarah's joy and their anxiety, and that just because that training was comprehensive did not make it correct or fair. She informed me about all the times I'd sought to create limits or present alternatives, but my parents had shut me down or deceived me into backing down. In the middle of January, I told her that I kept thinking about all the years I spent taking care of Sarah as a child, and wondered whether I was a bad person for not wanting to do it again as an adult. Lily looked at me and reminded me that I was never supposed to be Sarah's caretaker in the first place, that children should not raise their siblings, and that rejecting to perpetuate an unfair cycle did not make me selfish or nasty. She helped me recognize that my parents' problems with control and martyrdom had nothing to do with me. And insulating myself from their dysfunction was healthy, even when others disagreed. Rachel contacted me in late January and asked if I wanted to meet for coffee at a cafe near my place. I was frightened because despite her prior apologies, I was scared she would try to guilt-trip me over the family situation again. But when I arrived, she poured us both drinks and immediately began talking about my mother's childhood in this calm, serious tone. She informed me that my grandmother was much like my mother, continually generating a crisis or emergency that made her the focus of attention and held everyone else liable for fixing her difficulties. Rachel elaborated. When my mom was growing up, my grandmother would get sick or upset anytime someone tried to do something independent, and the whole family had to drop everything to take care of her emotional needs. She was 18. My mother learned to be important and in charge by sacrificing everything. And now she was doing the same thing, converting Sarah's care into an unbearable burden that characterized her whole existence. Rachel remarked that this did not explain how my parents treated me or justify their behavior, but it did help her understand why they couldn't see how unfair they were behaving. She stated, "My mom genuinely believed that suffering for your family was the only way to prove you love them, and she couldn't understand why I didn't want that same life." Hearing about the generational pattern made me feel sad for my mother in a way I hadn't before, as if she was trapped in a cycle she didn't even recognize. But it also helped me feel better about my decision to break away, as I didn't want to pass on the same dysfunction to anybody else. In early February, David called me and asked me to see Sarah at the group home to see how she was doing. I was apprehensive driving over there since I didn't know what to expect, or whether Sarah would be unhappy with me for not taking her in as our parents had wanted. When I got to the common room, Sarah was sitting with another woman her age and watching TV. When she spotted me, her face lit up. She turned around and started chatting excitedly about her roommate, the art class she was taking, and the staff member who had helped her learn how to make her own breakfast. And she walked me to her room and showed me how she decked it with posters and pictures, pointing out everything she picked for herself without anybody advising her what to use. She introduced me to 2 other staff members and proudly told them that I was her sister. This made my chest tighten. We sat in the common area for almost an hour and chatted about her life, the activities she loved, the persons she was becoming friends with, and the cuisines she wanted to try. It felt so different from all those years of merely addressing her needs and keeping her calm. For the first time, we were chatting as 2 actual persons rather than caregiver and patient, and I realized I had never known Sarah as a person until this moment. By early March, I'd fallen into a new schedule, visiting Sarah at the group home every other week and having coffee with Rachel once a month to catch up. My parents were utterly withdrawn from my life owing to the restraining order, and frankly, most days I didn't think about them at all. I continued to see Lily every 2 weeks since the guilt would strike me hard on certain days. Usually prompted by something strange, like as seeing a family at the grocery store or hearing a song that brought back memories of my adolescence. On such days I'd be grieved by the family disintegration and wonder if there was another way I may have handled it. But Lily kept going over the same facts with me, reminding me that I'd attempted limitations, recommendations, and compromise before. and my parents had always answered with harassment and manipulation. She reminded me that I had worked very hard to make my own life and that I should protect it without putting myself in danger again. Sarah was actually thrilled at the group home, where she had alternatives, a feeling of community, and people who saw her as a capable adult rather than a lifelong child. I could never have given her that sort of childhood, even if I had allowed my parents move her into my flat and spent every day caring for her. The restraining order meant that I could finally relax and feel secure in my own house.